Welcome to the Growth Minded Accountant podcast, where our experts will share best practices on running your firm in the digital age. This podcast is brought to you by CountingWorks PRO. Let's get started.
Welcome back to another episode of the Growth Minded Accountant, the podcast for tax and accounting firms who want to build smarter firms in a world that's getting noisier by the day. Today's topic is something we've been kind of walking around talking about for, last month or two, but we felt that, based on some questions that were coming in and some experiences we're having when we're meeting with and onboarding our own clients, that we wanted to take this to another level. So the title is Your Brand Has a Voice, and Does Your Firm Know What It Sounds Like? Okay, so we're going to talk today about how to humanize your firm, train your AI to help you do that, and grow through connection. So we're not here just speaking totally about writing style or your speaking voice. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about your brand voice. So what does your practice stand for? What is its personality? When people interact with your brand, how do they feel? Okay. And that is the reason when someone clicks, the idea is, are they going to call you to do a discovery call? Are they going to refer you, right? So based on what that experience is like is kind of going to start dictating that. So in the age of AI, what I'll call a lot of generic content and mass automation, your voice is the one thing that can't be commoditized. So I think this is a big deal, but there is a catch here. If you're not actively working on it, shaping it, your firm probably defaults to what we're going to call neutral, and neutral does not grow. Today, we are lucky to be joined by Rebekah Barton, our Chief Visibility Officer here at CountingWorks PRO. Rebekah has a background. She is a writer by trade. And Rebekah, actually say hello and then just give a little brief background. I know you've written, obviously, for all sorts of big brands and working with our clients, but just a general idea. So when people hear where you're coming from, there's some science behind this, what we're going to talk about today.
Absolutely. So hi, guys. If you haven't watched before, I'm Rebekah, Chief Visibility Officer here. Basically, that means I do all things digital marketing and SEO. So I have a lot of years of experience now, about 15 years of experience in SEO writing. My degree is in English. So lots of writing background. And then in my professional career, I've always worked in tech. So web writing, blog writing, content writing, very much in my wheelhouse. So this is really fascinating to me, and one of my favorite things, even on a personal level, to talk about brand voice and branding and how to sort of create a voice for your brand and help you establish yourself online with a particular tone.
So everything we're sharing today comes from our personal experiences with our clients in real life situations, right? We can tell very quickly when we onboard a new client and we help develop their brand, who's going to be successful and who's going to struggle based on the amount of input they put in, the amount of personality they put in. Our most successful brands show their pictures on their websites. They tell stories about the founder. They give a mission statement of some sort to really communicate with their clients, right? They drive their business and relationships with purpose. So what we're going to do today is talk about what are some different exercises you can use to help develop your own voice, and more importantly, how you can use tools like Max AI, our AI tool, to help it sound like you, okay? And this is how it's going to really drive real growth. So why voice is the new value. So what are we going to cover? With AI, ChatGPT, everyone now can produce more content, right? But what we're seeing is if you just ask, let's say ChatGPT, for example, to write an article about 529 plans, it can have the background, it can mostly be right. I would argue that generic chatbots do not have the same knowledge base as tools like Max do. But the reality is, without any extra inputs, without any extra preferences or memories, what you see is a bunch of sameness, right? So what's going to happen to those sameness articles, that content? It doesn't talk to your audience, which is the most important part. But number two, it's not going to be really discoverable, okay? So while AI has made content creation easier, most firms are publishing info, not insight, okay? So the big takeaway here is clients don't buy services, they buy clarity, confidence, and connection, and that comes from voice. So Rebekah, let's talk about, why do people trust voices? Why do people, they want to work with people they like, right? And why is that the best way to sell, specifically tax and accounting services, versus kind of a software approach.
Yeah, so I want to talk here about the human warmth effect, which is something that the Harvard Business Review has extensively covered and lots of marketing classes, journalism classes. I remember talking about it back in college. So basically, the idea is that the perceived warmth of a brand is the number one most important factor in whether someone trusts another person or a brand. So the more cold and distant you come across, the less likely you are to convert prospects as a tax and accounting firm. So your voice really matters. You want to be approachable. You want to be talking directly to people. You want to be using you. We can help you with your W-2. We can help you with your tax planning needs. We can help you with A, B, C, or D, whatever services you're offering. The more you talk to people and the more you talk to them like your brand is just another person, the more likely they are to convert. AI can definitely help you do this. I mean, you've got to remember that generic content is not going to land. Another statistic, I did a lot of research for this one. Another statistic is that 82% of consumers are more likely to trust companies whose content feels human and relatable. And that comes from the Edelman Trust Barometer in a 2023 report. So kind of right when AI was entering mainstream usage. Obviously, today, AI has kind of taken over most industries. Everyone is very familiar with it. But remembering that AI is there to assist you, think of it as a junior writer. The better you train it, the better your outputs are going to be, and the more human and the more connection you're going to get with all of the content that you're producing.
So let's talk about this. And this is an important issue, I think, facing most firms because it depends where you are in the maturity of your brand. So when we say let's start creating your voice, you're creating your narrative, right? So that's your story. So there's kind of an issue. If you're a solopreneur, that's pretty easy. It revolves around the founder's story, right? Why do I do this work? Who do I really help? What do I believe in? But when it comes to firms with multiple founders or partners and other staff, there are ways, and I'm going to ask you, Rebekah, there are ways that you can start or lead with the founder's story, kind of like the history and the staying power, right? We've been here, we've been trusted for decades, and this is who we were, where we started, and this is where we have evolved to. So when you're going through an exercise like that with a client, let's say a bigger firm versus a solopreneur, how would you ask questions to help start developing this voice and the story and make it into a firm narrative versus the founder narrative?
Absolutely. So a lot of times what I do is I tell them to think of their firm as a person. And we walk through who would your firm be if it was a human? What would their personality traits be? Where would they like to go? What would they dress like? If you give your firm a personality, it makes it a lot easier for me and for my team to help craft a narrative for you that's going to be unique, that's going to show exactly what you offer and the value that you bring to the table that no other firm can bring. One thing that happens a lot with tax and accounting firms is that on paper, you kind of can all sound similar, right? We offer tax planning, we offer virtual CFO services, we offer advisory. But once I really get talking to people and I hear they want to be approachable or they are really tech savvy or they want to be very professional, they want to focus on, coming across like a very upscale professional firm, or they want to be very casual. There's all kinds of different personality traits that people tell me. Once we have that information, I actually prompt AI with that often. As we're working through creating these custom narratives, I'll say, hey, if this firm were a person, these were the traits it would have. So please keep this in mind when you write copy, when you're helping me to create this story. As far as working in the owner or the other staff, their personal narratives, I like to do that typically on another page. We'll have a meet the founder page or a meet the team page and kind of weave individual stories in that way. But the firm page kind of focuses on the brand itself and the personality that the founder wants it to have.
And there's a couple things I think you need to realize when you're creating this voice. You need to establish trust. So I think you use that by being authentic, like telling your real self. You need to be able to show that you have a scalable process. And what I mean by this is it's a consistency thing. So you're delivering the same quality of results over and over again. And then you need to be able to differentiate yourself. So that's where positioning comes in. So we like to go through an exercise that says, hey, let's make it human. So what's step one? Write your why us sentence. I wanted to give a couple examples of what we mean by that. So what you want every client to remember about working with you. So an example, we help small businesses owners stop dreading tax season, or we're the kind of firm that answers your questions before you even ask them. I think that is actually a great one for any type of niche company or specialist. And specifically, if you think about it, if you are working with restaurant owners, you do know all the questions. You don't have to research, what keeps them up at night, what makes them, what are the KPIs they need to worry about. And by being a niche player, you kind of know this stuff by the back. So you're not spending time kind of getting to know the vertical and the client. You actually know it. So that would be step one. Then step two is say something that only you would say. And this is where we start talking about tone. I'll give some kind of interesting examples, but I think you'll get the idea. We believe taxes should be discussed over tacos, not spreadsheets. We speak fluent IRS, so you don't have to. And Rebekah kind of explained how that kind of plays into tone and how you take that tone across all of your marketing material. So your newsletter, your social sites, your About Us pages, your homepage. And that is what we mean by tone and kind of making it more human presentable versus comma designation, comma designation, comma designation, tax preparation planning, right? So that is the big thing we want, the big takeaway I think we want to get here.
Yeah. Well, you saw me smile during the taco comment. So that I think right off the bat, I had a connection to that, right? It made me laugh. It made me interested. It made me think, okay, these people are a little more fun. Maybe this is someone I want to work with. So I think that's kind of a natural in the moment reaction. That's what you want. You want your prospects to react to you and to immediately connect with what you're saying. And I think this is also a good time to bring up the mere exposure effect, which is kind of a marketing and psychology idea that the more familiar a brand's tone and phrases become to clients, the more likable and trustworthy your brand is going to appear. So by doing things like repeating certain statements or using the same tone of voice, so maybe like a fun-loving tone throughout your social media, throughout your blogs, things like that, you're going to build that trust and that authenticity, which is what 21st century clients want. People today don't necessarily want overly polished, overly egotistical. I think sometimes if you just have designation, comma, you come across as a little bit egotistical, and people don't want that. They want to be able to sit down with you and really get to the nitty gritty of their finances and learn how you are going to help them. And if you're coming across as an approachable brand that they can talk to in human language, regular layperson language, that's what people connect with and what today's clients want. So what Lee is talking about here with using kind of the same phrasing over and over, using the same tone across all of your branding, that's a really great way to start establishing trust before people even pick up the phone or send you an email.
Yeah, and I think from there, now we kind of get an idea of there's two places I want to go with this. First of all, after my next comment, I want to go into how you actually train your AI to be able to do this and put the tone across all of your copy. But the thing is, once you have your voice, you got to remember you need to start talking about your client. You need to make it about them, not you. And that's the whole concept with the egotistical, whatever. You do need expertise. You do need these designations. This is obviously what people are looking for. But at that point now, there's 20 of you that do that. What makes you different? And then what's in it for me? So what you have to do is sit back and look at it from your client's point of view. That's going to be a big game changer when you start developing your content. So how do you set up your AI tools like Max to be able to execute this copy on a consistent basis, whether that's being writing your blog articles, your newsletter, your web copy services, even starting integrating this into your proposals, okay? Even having some personality into your proposals and being able to do this at scale, for every single client, they get their own little narrative, okay? So explain a little bit of how that works if you can.
Yeah, so training your AI doesn't have to be hard. One thing I run into a lot when I'm talking to clients who aren't super familiar with AI is the fear of not knowing how to prompt, not knowing how to train it. It's not that challenging. So you're going to want to talk to your AI like it really is your writing assistant. Like you hired someone, like you hired a copywriter, they're sitting down with you, tell it what you want, tell it your brand voice. When I'm prompting, like I said, a lot of times I'll actually say, hey, This firm has a casual, approachable feel. They want clients to contact them, via text message rather than picking up the phone. So give it a lot of details about your firm, about how you operate. You can even provide it with writing samples or with the names of writers who you like. That can be a really helpful way to get tone. So if there is a particular blogger or something like that that you're really fond of, you can say, hey, can you please use the style of X, Y, or Z as you write my content? Also, give it feedback. When it gives you something and you don't like it or something sounds off, tell your AI, do you see this section? Copy paste the section. Can you rework this section to be a little bit more like whatever? Insert your changes here. And when it does a great job, let it know that too. All of these things will go into the AI's memories, and then over time, it's going to start producing better and better outputs that you're going to have to tweak less and less. So if it produces, say, a blog post that's just perfect and sounds exactly like your voice, say, hey, this was great. I really liked how you did, this, and this. And just let it know that it's doing a good job. Let it know where it's doing things a little bit incorrectly. And the more you do this and the more you talk to your AI system, the better it's going to get and the less work you're going to have to do on your end.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I did put together, I'm going to read kind of a sample narrative that I put together that kind of tells the story. So you get what we're talking about. And I think you can see putting yourself as the client in this story, and you'll see how it differentiates. While it's not a huge differentiation, meaning I'm not doing a niche here, I'm just differentiating myself as a CPA, for example. So a narrative style, I didn't set out to start a firm, I set out to solve a problem. Okay, so now what is that problem? Early in my career, I watched too many small business owners get blindsided by surprise tax bills, cash flow problems, or avoidable penalties simply because no one took the time to plan ahead with them. Okay, now you're setting the plate basically, right? And then what is that? They had CPAs, bookkeepers, software, but no one connecting the dots. So now you basically set it up where, hey, you may already have these people, these tools, and now I'm connected with you, but it's not really working, right? And then I'm going to continue with the copy. I knew there had to be a better way. So I left the traditional model behind and built something different. Okay, now I'm differentiating myself from the standard accounting firm accountant that's doing it the same way I've been doing it for 30 years, right? So how do I do that? A firm that leads with planning, not just filing, okay? So from compliance to advisory right there, right? A firm that speaks human, not IRS. So obviously that's important. People want to understand common language, and I understand exactly what the issues are. A firm that acts like a partner, not just a processor, right? So I am vested in your outcome, okay? I'm not just here to do a job and charge you an hourly bill and say that we're done. I'm here for your success, okay? So let's finish it and reinforce it. Today, our team serves growth-minded entrepreneurs and high-earning individuals who want clarity, control, and real strategy. So you'll notice here, I didn't go super growth-minded tech entrepreneurs. I still kept it broad enough that this speaks to an audience, but they're also putting themselves in the shoes that you want them to, right? They're saying, yeah, I'm a growth-minded entrepreneur. Oh, I'm a high-earning household. So you're now also starting to segment your client base. And that's going to be our next section. We're going to get into segmenting and why that's so importantly. So high-earning households want clarity, control, and real strategy. We use a planning-first approach powered by modern tools, including AI, combined with experience to spot what software alone can't. Now you just differentiated yourselves against some competition. Maybe they're looking at some AI tax tools or whatever. So whether you're scaling your business, selling your company, or navigating the complexity of high-income life, we help you make smarter decisions and keep more of what you earn. That's the end game, right? Because the numbers matter, but so does the story behind them. That is a narrative style about us and or positioning statement that you could build an entire voice around. So I think that was a good example. Hopefully you're now kind of connecting what we're saying and seeing it in practice, right? So let's get into segmentation. One thing, and we've talked about this in previous podcasts, is most firms do not segment their client base at all. All my clients, how many clients do you have? I have 350. Well, how many are business clients? Oh, 50 of them. How many are nonprofits? Oh, 10. How many are high net individuals? High income, dual income, and I can go on and on. But what you'll see is each one of those audiences wants different types of content. They want a different experience in some ways, right? They may even want different services. So it's not like this menu that is all over the place. You need to start saying, okay, audience A, this is what I do for you, and this is how I'm going to help you. So I'm not going to get into how to segment. There's a bunch of things we're doing at CountingWorks Pro right now that are going to do some auto segmenting of client bases based on profiles and information we can scrape from tax documents and things, financial statements, things like that. But explain why it's so important, Rebekah, if you can, to talk to a high earning W-2 household differently than you do a real estate investor when it comes to your marketing communication and even your voice and branding.
Yes. So before I really get into it, I have two statistics that I'm going to
Oh, look
share.
at you. I love statistics. I like this. Go ahead.
So many statistics today, guys. So in a Salesforce State of Marketing report from last year, 61% of the consumers polled said they were more likely to buy from brands that delivered content tailored to their needs and preferences. So right there, that's telling you that's what people want. And in a world where marketing is over inundated, people are getting blasted with ads all day long on their phone, on TV, on the radio, whatever they're listening to or looking at. You have to stand out and you have to have a hook that is going to draw in your particular demographic. That is step one. My next statistic is that segmenting email lists can increase open rates by up to 760%. And
That's
that is
all?
from
That's
Campaign
all?
Monitor last year, right? A very small number, truly. But that's from a report last year that Campaign Monitor put out. So this is telling you that this is something you need to be doing. It's not a super challenging thing to do, but you need to be speaking to the pain points of each individual audience that you have, even within niches. So we'll go back to restaurants because that's a very common niche that we use and a common niche that we see our clients have. If you, for instance, specialize in restaurants in general, but you have some clients who maybe own fast food franchises, their needs are going to be significantly different than someone who owns like a single upscale local establishment that's catering to, a high-end clientele. They're going to have different inventory needs. They're going to have different regulations. So it's really important even within a niche to segment. And I think that's something that I want people to focus on is the fact that you can actually hyper niche down, not just segment into, high income earners and businesses. You can segment your business owners even further. So this is something that once you start it, there's really no end to the type of segmentation and customized content you can do. And AI is able to assist you in a way that it's scalable. It would have taken you, weeks in some cases to put together different campaigns, different emails, different social media posts for all of these different groups. And now AI can kind of spit out all of the content you need in minutes. So it's possible now, even as a small firm, it's possible for you to segment and to really hit all of the pain points that your clients are experiencing. And not only to get better financial outcomes for them, but to increase your own earnings, because when you tailor content, you're going to be able to charge more for your advisory services. You're going to get more referrals. It's kind of a win-win situation for everyone.
Yeah, and I'm just going to add to that. I believe just from the reason we set up CountingWorks Pro the way we did to have, you could have 15 newsletters, and even some of the playbooks we're doing are even going to personalize things even more deeply, is that at any point, there's a segment, a type of person who wants to go deeper with your relationship with you. They want to go from tax prep to a tax planning type of quarterly appointment style advisory, right? So when you understand that moment and you've been speaking to that audience in your voice, you don't actually need to sell at that point. You just guide. They are already trusting you because you've been talking about this for, 6 months on your blog, on social media. And by the time they're ready to get that aha moment, they're like, okay, let's do this. And you're not sitting there going, oh, I charge this and that. They're like, okay, I want the benefits. And I think it really adds to your overall success and your revenue in some respects. So we talked about the segment of, we talked about this before, of using memories and really teaching the AI to sound like you. I want to understand this a little bit more before we go on. And I look at it where at this point, I feel I have an army of Lees. So when I use AI tools, I don't feel in any way, someone will say, did AI write this? And no, I wrote it, and AI delivered a polished version that my writing style, it's exactly what I want to write. But if I sat down and had to do this, it would take 8 hours, for example. And if I can now guide the AI with, it knows me now, it knows how I write, it knows, and if it's a little bit off, all I have to do is give it slight corrections and it nails it. So AI is really like a ghostwriter who studied your voice for years, but has learned it in, a week or so. But explain a little bit of how those little extra things you do, Rebekah, to get it as your junior writer, right? So the more feedback you give it, the faster it learns. So explain how AI is there to help you. And again, a lot of accountants are still, I'm never using this stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, yes, you need to. It is working for the tax and accounting space. And the examples we're giving just in the relationship layer are more important than ever. So kind of explain, what you do to get that more polished Rebekah Jr. output from AI tools.
Yes. So I was lucky in that I had a lot of content online. So what I did personally was I trained the AI on things I had previously written. That was my number one thing I did to start getting great outputs. You can do the same thing. Even if you don't have content published on the internet that you've written, so you can't feed it URLs, you can send copy paste old newsletters that you wrote yourself, copy paste old emails that you've responded to clients. Then you can say, when you respond to a client, here's the tone I like. Here are 10 examples of my own past responses. Anything that you've written for like a journal, if you've ever written for like an accounting journal, or you've written blog articles online, or you've published, anything to like a guest blogging space, like maybe you've written a finance article for a local news network during tax season, something like that. Any content like that, you can feed into your AI and train it on how you write, the types of cadences you use in your words. That's really important. One of the things that typically when someone uses AI and they don't train it well, you can tell in the cadence and the syntax what happened, that they were using a very generic AI and they didn't train it well. Lee and I both have trained ours to the point that we don't get a lot of that at all anymore. It writes very naturally because we've spent a lot of time working with it. So we are living, breathing proof that this does work. The more you train it, the better the outputs are going to be. So sentence structure, pacing is very important. If you don't like the pacing of words, or if there are certain words, I hate it when it uses navigating, for example. So I've actually told my AI, please don't use navigating.
Revolutionize.
Yeah, yes. We have lots of revolutionary ideas that we're navigating in AI. So you can tell it to just not use certain terminology, not use certain turns of phrase. It will remember and it will implement that. Another thing you can do is tell it the tone traits that you like. So you can say things like, I would like some humor injected, or I prefer a calm and confident tone. I want to come across as an expert in my field. I want to be very authoritative. I don't really want humor. You can go either way. So it really depends, again, on that personality that you want your brand to have. The more you talk to your AI, the more information you give it, the more you feed it things that you've done before, the closer those outputs are going to get to what you would write yourself. Sometimes I'm astounded, and I know Lee is too. The output will be what I would have done, but it would have taken me, 2 hours to write the article, and it does it in, 3 minutes. And then all I have to do is give it a once over, maybe input a couple of sources, and I'm done.
Yeah, no, I think it does even more. I mean, it makes me a better writer. It does research for me, and I can guide it. So it's not like it's guiding me. I'm guiding it. And when you're doing your own articles for, let's say, a target group, do the same thing. You're the expert. You have the experience here. Just talk to it. Like, think of it, you're having a conversation with yourself, but that's yourself as an assistant times 10, who's now going to research everything and then come back with the result that then you can polish. So this isn't fluff. This is seriously math. We talked about, Rebekah gave you a couple statistics on open rates. So firms that segment content by client type are going to see higher open rates. If you start upselling client bases, even a single email campaign targeted to a segment. So let's say dual income, high income, dual taxpayers. setting up content specifically for them. If you could take them from a $1,500 a year tax return to, let's just say, $6,000, $12,000 a year advisory service where you're saving them a significant amount of money, what does that take? If you get four of those, you just took four times 1,500 times four times 6,000. You could do the math. This is where it gets very lucrative. It matters to segment. It matters to target the content. And think of this too. It gets even more lucrative if you're doing this for virtual CFO-like services, where you're now taking what may have been a bookkeeping client and getting them, spending a much more in recurring fees as well. You'll also, I think, see many more referrals. If someone thinks you are the expert, let's say you're the entertainment expert, you're the CPA in Burbank that specialize in, producers, directors, whatever, in the trades. The perception that you know something that other generalists don't is there. You're going to get more referral rates and you're going to be able to charge more. So your voice builds trust. Segmentation creates relevance, and AI delivers this at scale because you could not do what we're talking about without this. So that's really important to understand. Voice makes it stick, segmentation makes it land. And when AI does the heavy lifting, you can grow without burning out. I think that's the real big deal here. So Rebekah, I think we've kind of nailed this topic, defining your voice, segmenting your clients, training your AI, and speaking with purpose. Give an example. I know we had a client, I think it was Nadia, a client that recently launched, and she followed all of this. She even did one of our AI produced, you could say, podcast deep dives is what we called them, and where it was a two-way conversation that kind of talked about her personality, told her story in a narrative style. This started creating her voice, and just talk about the incredible results that she got from this and how it's so important for other clients to actually step back and just spend the time to do what we're talking about.
Yeah, so Nadia is a great example. She actually found us during COVID when her firm had to go totally virtual, has now launched on our 3.0 platform, which is what Lee's talking about. And the deep dive that we did for her is great. She's had incredible results. Since going with our system and the personality, the narrative content that we now do, she has more than doubled her client base, but she's also able to provide them with better service because she is heavily using the AI system and she's able to provide responses. And I've talked to her multiple times. She said she can provide responses she never could have provided before because the AI is helping her do research that would have taken her days. So now she can provide more specific answers, better value to her clients. So AI is not here to replace you. That's something that I want to reiterate again, because that is, I think, a misconception, particularly in industries like tax and accounting, where it's been a lot of manual processes for a lot of years. It's a little bit scary to bring all of this tech into it. AI is truly there to help you achieve better outcomes. And she's a great example. We have other clients who have achieved similar results by relying heavily on our AI system to help them respond to clients, to help them create social media. She uses it to create custom newsletters for different segments of clients. And it really is going to work. There's really not a world in which it doesn't work. We've given you a lot of stats today, and I hope a lot of good advice for how to train your AI to help you. But this is where the world is going. So every industry is being affected. The sooner you kind of jump on the train of personalized content, tailored content for different groups of people, the better results you're going to see as a business and the more growth you're likely to experience.
Yeah, as AI commoditizes a lot of services, your voice really is what is going to be your moat. So that's going to be the trust, the relationship you built with your client. So the firms that use it right are going to kill it in the future. I think the ones that are ignoring and kind of head in the sand type thing are going to be struggling as we move forward in the AI age. And more importantly, you're going to see a ton of tools that are going to get more and more powerful in tax preparation and just the whole accounting bookkeeping cycle. So having these relationships, I think, is going to be more important than ever. And then you can take those tools and build upon it. That's where your real value is. That's where it becomes lucrative anyway. So hopefully this has been a good overview of why voice and branding positioning is so important. Rebekah, we have one sales thing for this growth minded accountant versus the last one. We are offering free discovery calls that will work with you for your own narrative. We'll actually interview you. We'll use some of the things that we talked about today and give you a takeaway, build a mini narrative for you And then you decide, hey, I love this. Let me come on board to CountingWorks Pro. We're doing these in two teams. We have Rebekah and Patrick, and then Alex and Abel that are setting these up. We will include that URL to create an appointment for this interview. Again, it's free, no sales, no nothing, just real advice and a narrative, hopefully, that can start you on your way. Is there anything you want to add to that? I know you're starting to do these. We just started doing some of these free narrative calls.
We are, yeah. We'd love to talk to you. I mean, I think that's kind of all I have to add. It's fun. We try to make it enjoyable and light, and just really get to know you. And like Lee said, it's not a sales pitch. We're just going to kind of go through, our process and kind of show you the difference that we can make by doing this narrative for you, and by helping you kind of tell your story online and differentiate yourself from all of the competition that exists. So we would love to talk to you.
All right, so that's a wrap for this edition of the Growth Minded Accountant. I hope you have found this valuable. We are busy working on our next topic list, and we'll continue to find ideas that can help you thrive in the AI age. Again, thank you for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you.